What up, guys, and welcome back to Thomas Reacts here on the 360 experience with myself, Thomas Mabaso. South Africans right now are not happy with President Ramaphosa after he attended an inauguration in Zimbabwe, the inauguration of President Mnangagwa, the man who got to power by a military coup and the man who has been accused of rigging the elections right now in Zimbabwe. We know that, and we've also heard that in Zimbabwe there was a lot of irregularities when it comes to these elections. Some polling stations didn't have ballot papers, some polling stations closed early, some polling stations didn't open at all. It was a mess in Zimbabwe, and we know that the Zanu-Pf administration and Mnangagwa especially have been accused of human rights abuses. All these things President Ramaphosa knows about them, but he decided to go to stand next to Mnangagwa anyway. So South Africans are not really happy about that because they feel like President Ramaphosa is endorsing whatever that is happening in Zimbabwe. President Ramaphosa is standing next to an administration that is responsible for Zimbabweans fleeing their own country. So right now I'm going to play you this video, guys, for Mighty Jamie, where he's going to break it down to us why President Ramaphosa should have never attended that inauguration, knowing exactly what he knows about Mnangagwa and Zanu-Pf.
President Ramaphosa should not have done this. Desmond Tutu once said, if an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, the mouse is not going to appreciate your neutrality.
Fact.
Now, the crocodile, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has the people of Zimbabwe in his jaws. And I'm sure that they don't appreciate seeing one of the most important people in Africa, the president of South Africa, the second largest economy on the continent, smiling, waving, congratulating Emmerson Mnangagwa and the Zanu-Pf for a very problematic election result. The three things I want to say about why this was wrong. Number one, the Zanu-Pf government has committed atrocities and continues to commit atrocities and abuse human rights in Zimbabwe. It doesn't make sense for somebody who is a Democrat, somebody who values liberal ideals, to go and consort with somebody who is diametrically opposed to those values. The Zanu-Pf committed a genocide in the 1980s where between 20 to 30,000 people were killed. In the 2000s, they arbitrarily and violently seized farms from farm owners and implemented an unjust and unlawful land reform program. Unjust because it was unlawful. Don't get me wrong, you do need land justice, but not the way that the Zanu-Pf government did it. They are corrupt on top of the commission of atrocities, and we saw that in the Gold Mafia documentary. There have been other reports about how corrupt this government is and how they are oligarchs who are linked to the Zanu-Pf government who are milking Zimbabwe dry.
And guys, first of all, I think people need to understand it, because I'm going to repeat this until people understand it, that President Ramaphosa did not go to Zimbabwe on behalf of South Africans, because I know this is what they want us to believe. But President Ramaphosa did not go to Zimbabwe to support Mnangagwa on behalf of South Africans. He did not go there because South Africans are in support of Mnangagwa and are in support of Zanu-Pf. South Africans are actually mad at Mnangagwa and they are mad at Zanu-Pf for what they are doing to Zimbabweans, because right now you can see how Zimbabweans are living in South Africa. You can see how Zimbabweans are being treated in South Africa. Zimbabweans are being treated like second-class citizens in South Africa, and I'm sure that's how they are treated all across the world. So it is very disturbing for our president to stand next to a man who has been accused of all these things, and President Ramaphosa knows all of these things. He knows all of these things. That's why I'm saying that President Ramaphosa did not go to Zimbabwe on behalf of South Africans. He did not go there because South Africans support this administration. Ramaphosa went there on behalf of African National Congress, and he went there on his own behalf as the friend of President Mnangagwa. So I think people really need to understand that, and they must never even think that we as South Africans support everything that is happening in Zimbabwe. South Africans do not support anything that is happening in Zimbabwe. South Africans are not happy about the fact that Zimbabweans right now are living the way that they are living right now. Zimbabweans, we know that they want to go back to their own country. They want to build their own country. They don't want to live in South Africa. They don't want to live in all these other places across the world. They want to live in their own country where where they can raise their own families. But you know what this Zanu-Pf administration is doing to Zimbabweans. You know how broken Zimbabweans are, and you know the fact that Zimbabweans have actually never been free, even after their colonization. When those white people left, the Zanu-Pf took over and it oppressed Zimbabweans more. South Africans understand that. We as South Africans understand that. And it is very problematic for us, for our president to stand next to Mnangagwa, because we understand that now Mnangagwa is the president of Zimbabwe. He is in charge right now in Zimbabwe. Guess what's going to happen? A lot of Zimbabweans are going to come to South Africa, and South Africans must never complain when Zimbabweans come to South Africa. They must never complain when Zimbabweans come to South Africa. South Africans need to understand that if you really want to fight this issue of illegal foreigners in South Africa, you need to take the fight to the government. Leave the foreigners alone. Leave these foreign nationals alone. Leave them alone. These people are in this country to seek for a better life. Leave them alone. Because it can't be that South Africans keep supporting the African National Congress, but the African National Congress supports Zanu-Pf, the same Zanu-Pf that creates a situation where Zimbabweans leave their own countries to come to South Africa. And now in South Africa, you've heard some ANC members saying that Ramaphosa must unleash the military on foreigners and unleash the military on foreign nationals. Do you understand how crazy and how twisted that it is? That South Africans are supporting the African National Congress. The African National Congress is supporting Zanu-Pf, the same Zanu-Pf that is responsible for Zimbabweans leaving their own countries. And now that Zimbabweans are coming to South Africa to seek for a better life, so ANC members are saying that Ramaphosa must unleash the military on the same foreign nationals who came to South Africa to seek for a better life, despite the fact that the president of African National Congress supports everything that is happening in Zimbabwe. Guys, that is twisted, man. That is evil. It is twisted and it is evil. That's why I'm saying, South Africans, we really need to understand our own brothers and sisters. We really need to understand where these people come from. And we really need to make it clear that we do not support people who come to South Africa to commit crime. If you're gonna come to South Africa to commit a crime, you must be sent back to your own country. And when you get there, you must be put to jail for committing a crime in a foreign country. On that one, we are very clear. People who come to South Africa only to commit a crime needs to be deported. And when you get to wherever you are going, you need to be thrown into jail for committing a crime in a neighboring country. But Zimbabweans who are here to seek for a better life, no, guys, we need to leave them alone. That one, we need to leave them alone. You know this thing of South Africa. South Africans have this thing of saying that we don't want foreigners in this country. Man, South Africans need to stop talking like idiots. We are not the first country to have immigrants. Each and every single country in the world right now, it has immigrants on its land. Just go to the United States and you know how many people are in the United States right now. Do you know how many people who were not born in the United States are living in the United States? We are not the first country to be dealing with this issue of foreign nationals. So we are not the first, and we are not the last. So this whole nonsense of us trying to demonize these people who come to South Africa to seek for a better life, it is very disturbing, guys. It is very disturbing. And South Africans need to be very careful about these people who are trying to gaslight them into attacking the foreign nationals into our own country. Because you know, guys, you know what happens when people are fired up. When people are mad and fired up and feel like attacking foreign nationals, you know, when they get to those shops, when they get to those to the buildings where foreign nationals live, you know what happens. They don't check if anyone is in South Africa legally or not. Everyone is subjected to violence. So that's why I'm saying this whole thing is problematic, because even people who are in South Africa legally, people who have papers to be in South Africa, are being attacked because they are foreigners in South Africa. And we cannot allow people to create a situation where South Africa is going to isolate itself from the rest of Africa, guys. We are all Africans. We need to love each other as Africans. These people who are trying to demonize our brothers and sisters, we must never allow and give them the platform to demonize our own brothers and sisters who came to South Africa to seek for a better life. We must never demonize the people who came to South Africa to seek for a better life. This is our brothers and these are our sisters. We are not the first country to have foreigners in its own land, and we are not the last. South Africans really need to be careful, guys, because even people who are in this country legally end up being subjected to violence, mainly because there are foreigners in South Africa, and we cannot allow that, guys. We cannot allow that. We cannot allow a situation where foreigners are heavily demonized in South Africa, man. We cannot allow that situation. So South Africans, please, guys, please, if you really want to take the fight to the African National Congress, if you are really mad about all these illegal foreigners who are committing crime in South Africa, you must take the fight to the ANC. That's where you should take the fight. That's why even that stupid group, Operation Dudula, that's why it is not even relevant today. Because they wanted to run after the foreign nationals in this country. They didn't want to take the fight exactly to the government. Instead, they wanted to demonize our own brothers and sisters. And I will applaud the South Africans for actually not following Operation Dudula. I will applaud the South Africans for that. For not following Operation Dudula. And in South Africa, guys, you need to understand that we've been living with people who come outside of South Africa for a long time. When I was growing up, my grandmother had 2 shacks behind her house, and in those shacks she would rent them out. And most of the time, these shacks would be occupied by people who come from Malawi, Zimbabwe, and everything. That's why we know these people. We know them because we grew up with them. So we cannot allow, guys, a situation where we are going to demonize the foreign nationals who come to our country, whereas our presidents support this kind of nonsense. I hope that one is clear, guys.
So that's number one. Number two, there were issues with this election, obvious issues. The opposition could not get access to the media. But even on election day in and of itself, you saw how there was a massive delay in the delivery of ballots to key cities such as Harare and Chitumbiza. That delay in and of itself incapacitated some people from voting, even though voting was allowed on the second day, because the second day was not a holiday. So let's be very clear. The abuses of the opposition, not allowing them to have rallies, not allowing them to have state media. President Ramaphosa knows the standard for democracy because that's applied in South Africa. The EFF can hold rallies at the FNB Stadium if they like. They can be on SABC, they can be on Newsroom Africa, ENCA, it doesn't matter, right?
And guys, as a South African, it really has to be a worrying thing to see your president working next to Mnangagwa like that, man. Knowing exactly that we are going to 2024 elections, man. South Africa is going to its own elections, and our president is standing next to a guy who has been accused of rigging the elections, man. How crazy is that? And they are supporting these guys. They are supporting them. I remember last time when President Ramaphosa was and his administration was asked about this whole Zimbabwean thing, they said, "Now we're going to wait and listen to what the SADC mission says." And the SADC mission came back and said that election was a shame. And guess what? They said, bye-bye SADC, bye-bye SADC mission. We are going to support these guys anyway. So they were hoping that the SADC mission was going to say something positive about the Zimbabwe elections so that they can go to Zimbabwe with all the confidence. But the SADC mission said that election was a scam, was a shame. It was an embarrassment. But guess what? The ANC was like, nope, we don't care what the SADC mission says. We are going to support them. We are going to support them anyway. That's why I'm saying that, guys, this guy is not there on behalf of South Africans, man. He's there on his own behalf as the friend of Mnangagwa, and he's there on behalf of the African National Congress, not South Africans.
That's democracy. That's what democracy looks like. But that's not what the people of Zimbabwe were allowed and afforded. So how do you come from a democratic state and go support a state which has got obvious issues, especially after the SADC observer mission says that there were irregularities and that the election was not free and fair? I mean, come on. What the hell is going on here? But finally, the reason I think he shouldn't have done this is that Zimbabwe is holding SADC back.
Exactly.
Zimbabwe is holding SADC back. It's the sick man of SADC. You cannot have a country with such high levels of unemployment, such high levels of inflation, and then think that there's going to be regional prosperity. There's not going to be regional prosperity because there's a big leech sucking dry the whole region. And if this economic malaise continues in SADC, the region is not going to be able to fully exploit the African continental free trade area. And the reason why there's an economic sickness in Zimbabwe is because of the dictatorship. So he shouldn't have done this. He really shouldn't have done this. And he has taken the side of the oppressor in this situation. He saw the crocodile biting the people and clapped for it.
Exactly, man. That's what happened right here, man. That's what happened. This is exactly why South Africans are so mad, because Ramaphosa understands these things, man. He understands these things. But I guess his interests are more important than what South Africans are feeling right now. Because, like, guys, I said in my previous videos, like, guys, these guys, they don't care because their actions do not affect them personally. The ANC cadres and the ANC executive, they don't care about South Africans, and they don't care about supporting Zanu-Pf because they know the consequences of supporting Zanu-Pf does not affect them personally. They know that. You know that the poorest people in South Africa are the ones who are gonna have to deal with all this thing of influx of migration into the country. They know that. They don't care anyway, and it is really scary for us, guys, as South Africans go into 2024 election. This is the reason why that conversation, it is so important, that will the ANC relinquish power if they are voted out of power in 2024? Will the ANC simply step out of the way in 2024? That is the big question. That is the huge question.
Fellow South Africans, it is now common cause, according to the SADC Observer Mission, that the elections in Zimbabwe were a complete sham. The elections could not meet the threshold of being considered free and fair. Essentially, these elections have now elected Emmerson Mnangagwa as president under very dubious conditions. What it concerns us as South Africans is that President Ramaphosa is attending this, in my opinion, illegally elected president's inauguration. This is a betrayal of the people of this country. It is a betrayal of SADC, and more seriously, it undermines our stance in Africa for a country that wants to secure democracy. Let me highlight why this is such an important issue. Because actually the issues in Zimbabwe are issues in South Africa. When there's water that flows into your house because of a tap that's outside, you don't start off by mopping out the water. You actually go out and close the tap.
And guys, it is so disturbing because if you remember, the Secretary General of African National Congress, Fikile Mbalula, says that we need to respect the democratic processes of Zimbabwe. We need to simply look away and pretend like everything that is happening in Zimbabwe does not affect South Africans. These guys, they want us to pretend like everything that is happening in Zimbabwe does not affect South Africa and South Africans. That's what they want us to do. They want us to look away. While Zanu-Pf oppresses people, that's what they want, man. They want us to look away. Because these people, man, these are the same people who said that military coup in Niger was not acceptable. These are the same people who said that the military coup in Gabon was not acceptable. But they are okay with Mnangagwa and the electoral coup that took place in Zimbabwe. Because that's what happened, man. There's no difference between a military coup and an electoral coup. What happened in Zimbabwe is it's electoral coup, man. It's a coup, man. It's a coup. It is not different from the military coup. It is not different from the way Mnangagwa assumed power, man. It's no different. It's high time in Africa we talk about these electoral coups. Because people go there and they rig election and they expect us to listen to everything that they say, but they don't want us to listen to people on the ground, man. People on the ground in Zimbabwe, they've said enough for us to sit here and conclude that those elections was a shame. They've said enough. They've given us enough evidence for us to believe that those elections was a shame. Just imagine in South Africa, man. Just imagine in South Africa if some polling stations didn't open, some polling stations didn't have ballot papers, some polling stations closed early, some polling stations didn't open at all. How would South Africans feel? Man, South Africans would be out there rioting, man, burning things. Because they would understand this is election interference at its own best. But how are we okay when it happens to Zimbabwe, man? How are we okay with this thing when it happens to Zimbabwe, man?
We have to uphold the sovereignty and the democratic practice in Zimbabwe if we are going to deal with the influx of immigrants coming from Zimbabwe into South Africa. Second,
exactly, man. Exactly. It can't be that South Africans support the African National Congress, but at the same time, they are not okay with the Zimbabweans coming to South Africa, man. It makes no sense. If you support the African National, or if you support the ANC, you have to be okay with Zimbabweans coming to South Africa. You have to be okay with that, man. You have to be okay with people running from Zimbabwe to come to South Africa. You have to be okay with that because your president endorses Zanu-Pf. Your president endorses Mnangagwa, man. South Africans need to stop with this double standard nonsense, man. I'm telling you. We need to stop with this double standard nonsense, man. If you are an ANC man, you don't have any right, man. As long as the ANC is in charge, South Africa has no right to complain about the foreign nationals who come to in this country, especially people who come from Zimbabwe. You have no choice. Like, you have no choice there. You have to sit back and take it in. Because this is the government you chose. Chances are South Africans are still going to choose the ANC in 2024. So South Africans must stop complaining about the influx of foreigners in this country. Because they support an administration that endorses things that are taking place in Zimbabwe, man.
We should observe the SADC observer mission. It is true today that 3 out of the 53 presidents in Africa, only 3 attended that inauguration. Only 3 from SADC have attended, which tells me that other leaders have a spine and a courage to say they will not stand up for rigged elections. Yet our president went through. So the message is simple. If the ANC cannot be trusted to fight for democracy in Zimbabwe, how can it be trusted to fight and maintain democracy here in South Africa? Let this be a salient warning to all of us. We need to lead on democracy, and we need to hold the ANC to account on this issue. And it is completely wrong that President Ramaphosa is endorsing Emmerson Mnangagwa.
Fact, man. Fact, I'm telling you. And Ramaphosa, guys, went to Parliament, and John Steenhuisen, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, really confronted Ramaphosa about this whole thing of Zimbabwe, man. And it was really hurtful because the economic freedom fighters decided not to participate in this session because I was really hoping that Malema was going to hold his feet to fire, especially when it comes to this issue of going to Zimbabwe to endorse Zanu-Pf and Mnangagwa, man.
Economics aside, Mr. President, the new entrants to BRICS, Iran and Saudi Arabia have a sickening disregard for women's rights or gender equality, denying girls and women the basic freedoms and legal rights, and excluding them virtually entirely from public life. By aligning South Africa with the so-called members of your club, you're standing with autocrats and dictators while sacrificing the principles enshrined in our own constitution. Let's be clear. This is not about human rights or what BRICS can do for South Africa. This is about what BRICS, and specifically Russia, can do for the ANC. It's the same reason you attended Emmerson Mnangagwa's inauguration. You're willing to give false legitimacy to
honorable members.
Zanu-Pf because you know full well that your own party is following in their footsteps. Mr. President, do you care nothing about the suffering and deprivation experienced by women of Iran and Saudi Arabia and the people of Zimbabwe who are now shackled with an illegitimate election which your own SADC region has cast aspersions on. Thank you.
Shying away from other countries, which has never really been our foreign policy thrust. We are friends with all countries in the world. We are enemies of none. And so therefore, those who would want us to be enemies of other countries really are knocking at the wrong door. We impart our values to others. And if you...
What values, Ramaphosa? What values? What values are you talking about, man?
You did care, Honorable Steenhuisen, to travel with us around the world and interact with those people that we meet. You will see the influence and the impact that South Africa has and the respect that South Africa is given by other countries around the world. And it is largely because of what we stand for. And we are never shy, never hold back from articulating what we stand for. We are South Africans, we are driven by human rights, and we subscribe to that. And thank you very much.
Ramaphosa talks about South Africa being driven by human rights, but it seems like he doesn't care about the human rights of Zimbabweans, man. He doesn't care about the human rights of Zimbabweans. He's talking about human rights. That's what the president of South Africa says, man. So guys, please tell me what you think on the comment section, and don't forget to hit that like button. And the most important part, guys, please subscribe. My name is Thomas Mabaso, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.